Well, I'd like to welcome everyone who's taking time away from their regular day to join us on our third of a new program called GemQuest. The idea of GemQuest was put together as a way of making it fun and learning online about gems, and hopefully using the group mind of all the brilliant people that are attending. We will learn as much as possible about each gem we focus on as a part of an ongoing series, one gem per month. And we usually take roughly about an hour to an hour and 20 minutes max to cover the gem, which is really not adequate for something as diverse as garnets in this case, but it is what we have. We are very fortunate to have the support of the Gemological Association of France, Barcelona, Canadian Gemological Association, as well as those who do join us from the GIA, as well as any other interested people in the community and of gems and minerals out there. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing your time, and hopefully during the progress as we go through the subject, your knowledge and your questions. Our subject today is, oh, sorry, before we go there, I want to at least give credit where credit's due here. I'm co-hosting this with Julien Ralph, who is well known to many people around the world, but maybe not all of you. Julien is a brilliant programmer who, through his knowledge of gems and minerals, has constructed the most comprehensive database sites in the world on minerals and gems called mindat.org and gemdat.org, and it's through the auspices of his Zoom programming and his technological assistance that we make these programs possible. So thank you very much, Julien, for your support and your help in all this program and helping us take the knowledge that we learn here out to the world. And the interesting thing will be is that given the time that he needs to do so, all these programs are archived and will eventually turn up on a page in the gemdat.org that's appropriate to the gem class. Be it, we so far have done diamonds, opals, and today we're doing garnets. Garnet is a very broad class of gems, and the original name derives from the Latin granatum. Some people think it might even have Sanskrit origins, and it's usually granatum referred to its, in Latin referred to its red color, but partly also to its similarity to pomegranate seeds when it's found seeded in the matrix. That's often found in, like, sometimes in mica schists and it looks like seeds embedded in the rock. Early writings also referred to it as carbuncle because of its similarity to that very ugly skin condition known as a carbuncle. So many people I've talked to over the years as a jeweler bemoan the fact that garnets are only red, and I don't like red. And I like to impress upon people, this is definitely not true. This group of stones has almost every color known to man, including colorless, although I haven't seen a colorless one for some time. The only color missing in all the early literature, and that's even going up into the last couple of decades, was blue. And then people like Peter at the top, Peter Young, have actually introduced blue garnets to the world, and thank you for doing that. So we now have even that missing color now included in the spectrum of colors that garnets occur in. Garnets inhabit so many geologic environments, both in rocks and in post-erosional deposition in sedimentary locations. And for that matter, it's very easy to find if it's in an area where garnets are found in the rock, because it tends to be harder than the post rock. So when it erodes out, it can concentrate quite easily. And so we have a creek near where I live, within about 10 miles of where I live, called Ruby Creek. And that's because the bottom of this creek is paved with extremely tiny, perfect little garnet crystals. So if you pick them up and you wash them off and look at them under the scope, it's just an amazing carpet of red, shiny little red crystals of garnet. So for those who have microscopes to like micro minerals, it's really a joy to look at. But oftentimes garnets can be concentrated on lakes, lake shores and seashores after storms, because the heavy action of the waters acts as a panning, concentrating medium, and sometimes deposits after big storm waters, layers or ripples of garnet on the shore. So this is quite something. Because of its ease of discovery, we're fairly certain that it was one, if not the major abrasive used by early and ancient artisans. Since it's harder than the mother rock, it was usually left behind, and it was used to make jewelry, to reshape other stones into tools, and so therefore it was a very useful gem or mineral. And before carborundum and diamond tools, sandpaper used in metal and woodworking was de rigueur. It was the most popular means of sanding and finishing wood and metals. And during my lifetime, garnet paper was a very popular abrasive. And because of that fact, it was actually all the garnet mines in North America, and I assume other parts of the world, were classified as very important to the war effort and were protected areas and considered strategic. Gem garnets have been adorning man since biblical times, and one of the stones in the breastplate of Aaron, the Jewish high priest of Old Testament times, was a garnet. In the Victorian era, one of the most popular jewelry types was jewelry made up of tiny set Bohemian garnets. And it's interesting that Bohemian area was also the first area well known for the previous stone we'd considered, which is opal. So the Hungarian and Czech areas where these garnets were found formed a very vibrant and long-lasting industry that lasted right up until the 1970s, I believe, until other garnets started to become more popular. In today's discussions, we're lucky to have some very knowledgeable and talented panelists, many of whom are famous in the gem and mineral world. First off, reviewing the geology of garnets, we'll hear from Peter Lickberg. Then, to round off our knowledge in the chemistry and subspecies of garnets, as well as show us images of cut stones, is Grandmaster Faceter, Dr. Clement Schwartzinger. Then we'll hear from Peter Ngumba, also known as Peter Young, AKA, who's a third generation Kenyan African gem buyer, who gets to see the garnet mines and miners and has frontline experience in buying, grading, and negotiating for garnets and other African gems. Next panelist is Peter Lickberg, who's going to share some excellent slides on his cutting and collecting of garnets in Russia. And then we'll hear from Willow and Quinton White from Ottawa, who will show us slides of their collecting of garnets in Russia and Africa. And I think this is important. We include this kind of information in our programs so that people can see where things come from and learn a little bit more about the basic geology of what creates the gems we like to put in jewelry. And then we'll have some images from the world famous MIM Museum in Lebanon. And then Catherine Donnell, I hope she's here, I can't see her name, but hopefully she's joining us, from the Royal Ontario Museum, will share some pictures from there. But first, a brief bit of housekeeping. We're going to ask that all of your microphones be turned off so that we're not picking up background noises that will distract us during the panel discussions. And at the end of each panel presentation, we're going to have a Q&A session. And we really want to encourage you to be creative in your questions so that we can learn more from each of these panelists, because they have a vast amount of knowledge that they can share. And I think this will help us to increase the learning quotient of our programming. And as Joel already said, if you have a question, please send it to him by chat and we'll make sure it gets asked. And if you want to actually ask the question verbally, that's okay too. And just also ask for that in chat to Jolian. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, who is the world famous Peter. Where are you, Peter? I'm trying to find where you're hiding on the screen here. I've lost you. Peter Lickberg.
Now you can hear me.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Okay. And Peter's going to acquaint us with a bit of the geology of garnets. And Peter is very well known for his knowledge of not only geology, but also having one of the world's highest level of collecting skills as a gem mineral collector. He's been virtually every country in the world collecting, and all the major deposits are known to him either in person or at least in literature. So I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit of geology from Peter. Take it away, please, Peter. And Jolian, could you give him screen sharing?
You can. You can do that now.
Let's see here, just hold on. Oops. I'm sharing the screen now. Is that okay?
Yes, we can see that.
Very good. Let's just hope it's working. So I will give you a very short introduction to the geology of garnets. Ray asked me not too long ago, so in fact, I had to do this afternoon. Anyway, of course, magmatic is one of the keys. And then we come to metamorphic. I will show you a few magmatic here. So of course, here you have, the photo is from the Andes, where the lava has reached the surface. So of course, when we come to the classification of rock, this is a whole science by itself. I will just mention a few of them, and I will show you examples of a few. So of course, if this magma crystallizes further down, we'll have other types of deposits and other types of rock. And here, of course, you see a typical top of volcano lava flow. And where you can find, I mentioned here, I will start with granite and pegmatite, granitic pegmatites. I will show something from kimberlites, eclogites. Then we come to rhyolite, rhodocites, andesite, and even basalts. There's a whole series of garnets. But then when we come to the metamorphic, I would say that most of the gem quality garnets from, for instance, East Africa come from metamorphics. But these are absolutely connected to the magmatic events nearby. And of course, metamorphics also by pressure and temperature changes. So here we have one example, which is an almandine from a rhyolite in Garnet Hill, Ely, Nevada, photographed by Tony Peterson. I've marked all the photographs, 1.2 centimeter. Many of those in magmatic rocks do not have gem quality, but what we should always keep in mind from any gem deposit is typical, where they're very, very good condition of crystallization is that 1 to 2% is of gem quality. So if you go to a river in East Africa, where all the garnets have tumbled around, the quantity of gem quality is extremely high because all the garnets with fractures, they have tumbled around, being broken to bits and pieces, and they're now in sand grains. And the really high gem quality are larger pieces. So that gives, of course, a better chance for the miners to recover more high quality garnets and for much less work. So here we see granite to the left and a granitic pegmatite crossing to the left also and to the right. And if we look closer, the left picture here, you can see the contact on the upper part and the contact by the lower, by my daughter there. And in between, you have this gray shown with, so this pegmatite has crystallized with aplite sequences. Aplite is very, very fine grained. So within the granite, this vein crystallized, pegmatite structure is larger crystals. And within the aplite, we often find garnets. Usually they're small, but they can be very, very gemmy. So for instance, in a sand on a beach derived from such an area, you could find a lot of very tiny, small gemmy garnets. And here we have a vein to the right in the same granite and not far away. And you see it's completely different, just a pure pegmatite, but there are also some bigger garnets. Here we have pegmatites that formed a deep in metamorphic sequences. Upper right is Amphibolite. And in fact, in Amphibolite, we can often find, due to the metamorphosis, it could be near the contact with a pegmatite or granite, or it may not be visible. But of course, the temperature and the pressure changes often form very nice garnets in amphibolites. And one such mine in Sjönabad, Sweden, was mined 3,000 years ago. And those garnets are about 5, 6, up to 7 centimeter, highly fractured. Here you can see in a pegmatite, you see it's plenty of muscovite. This is a zone in this one pegmatite that has very, very complex garnets. And here is garnet inside aquamarine and spessartine garnet on spodumene, all from pegmatites. And here's Andreas Smith, a very beautiful picture, close up, and you can see how incredibly lovely faces the garnets have on the edges also. And here is one without such, but absolutely beautiful. Now you see those have plenty of inclusions, and those are saved for specimens, which most of you all know, but not in the gem world. Now here is a spessartine, not gem quality. We'll come to gem quality. This is from a pegmatite. So There are very, very specific conditions really to create the gem quality, as I said, 1 to 2%. And this is in principle the only nice one found in this pegmatite. So here is from Little Tree Mine, Ramona, California, where there's some very fine ones. Now here is diamond basin of Russia, found in the 1950s. They found diamonds in Siberia before that, but they didn't find the kimbolites where they occurred. Here is a cross-section of kimbolite and a beautiful garnet inside diamond. Michael Bogomolov photograph, absolutely beautiful. And when you're searching for some gems like diamonds, you're not searching for diamonds primarily, you're searching for garnets to find and see if the conditions for this kimbolite were the right, perhaps to have brought up diamonds. So here is the mirror pipe also. Now another deep-seated formed rock type is eklogite. This is from Anklovdalen in Norway, which is very beautiful. It's really, really beautiful polish. And some of the eklogites also contain garnets. You know, conditions are a bit similar. Garnets, as you know, are brought up from very deep, from within 150 kilometers in the mantle. And here is an example of what you mentioned, that weathering of rocks, often you can see on these grains, they have not moved very far, because some of the grains you can see the nice crystal shape, very small, from Almeria in Spain, but very high quality. So some of the metamorphic rocks have smaller crystal, but very, very high quality. And here is from the Jeffrey mine. We have to look at one of the beautiful specimens. Of course, such a specimen is tremendously much more rarer than if we would find those pieces rounded in a river. There's no comparison. This is like a Mona Lisa, an extremely fine specimen. One of the world's best garnets, if not the best garnet specimen. Now I come to metamorphic rocks. And this is a very good example. Why? Because these rocks have weathered. So the rocks have weathered into clay in the ocean, then thicker and thicker, and then formed to clay schist. And when metamorphosis occurs, pressure, temperature change, and some of the minerals would gather to bigger crystals. So tiny grains of garnets, or they can even reform from other. Here often you found staurolite together with garnets. And this is from Fauske, Norway. There are many areas of the world where you have garnets up to fist height, or even much larger, not rare, like in Kola Peninsula, Russia. Now, typically they don't have gem quality. Here is another photo of Andreas Schmidt. And you can see this is very, very beautifully lit. So it looks very gemmy, from Wrangell, Alaska. Most of those, you know those specimens, they don't look they're very dark. So we have not cut very much, but as Ray mentioned, garnets have been used for a very long time, and in Czech Republic it was a very big use early on for garnets. So here is from Mindat, specialty from Marienfluss. Now the left one, you can see it's in mica, but I think I have not been up there. I've been very close to Marienfluss in Opovo, but not to the deposit. And that's probably the only deposit that I know where you can encounter crocodiles, except for the rivers of East Africa, of course. So those are, for a metamorphic rock, extremely high quality. They're very rare and usually up to 1 centimeter. And of course, we have those newer ones, the last decade. Now I'm just showing, and I think we will see later on, an example. So one of the key areas producing beautiful garnet is the East African metamorphic belt. And most of the gem quality that is being mined is from secondary alluvial deposits. And the exemption is those giant spessartine garnets that we've seen up to 7-8 centimeter, just fantastic. Now another gem garnet at Tsavorite from this area, it was named from Tsavo National Park in the East African metamorphic belt is here. And they're very rarely found in beautiful crystals. And typically in this metamorphic sequence is that you will get nodules, just like almandines in Schönevod I mentioned. There, you could find a big chunk, but the gemmy areas are very, very small, and they should be multiple crystals. So sharp crystals like this is only like in Merelane, the tanzanite deposits. And I will later speak a bit about demantoid. I will just mention here contact metasomatic. So just a bit more about, if you have a granite, for instance, reaching a limestone, you will have a contact metamorphic. You can have a rim of many, many meters, or tens of meters, or 100 meters, of garnet forming right to contact the reaction between the granite and the limestone. That's a typical contact metamorphic. But then also you have a lot of ore deposits where skarns are formed, and skarns are typically, one of main components is garnets of skarns. In skarns, it's very hard to find very high quality garnet, but sometimes we do, but particularly as specimens. So that is a very short introduction, and I will show you a little bit more when we come to demantoid. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So I'll mute my here. You will mute me.
No, you can stay open. Keep your mic open, please, Peter. So
All right.
has anybody got any questions about some of the geological terminology or some of the information that Peter just shared with us? I'd like you to be bold and ask some questions.
No questions so far. That was a very short introduction, but I hope it gave you a little bit of idea.
Your modesty is overwhelming, Peter. Thank you for doing that work, and really appreciate the fact that you covered it so broadly and so quickly. So if there aren't any questions, I mean, I'd like to ask you, Peter, one question.
Yes.
Is how many of these environments have you actually collected garnets in?
I have collected in a lot of different, I brought out just a few, but most of my garnets are now at the Museum of Natural History here. So I brought 47 flats there the other day. Many of my garnets are in the gem exhibit there that we have right now. So I have some really nice specimens, and the ones I have at home, I could have shown you, some, but that are, I would just, that is not possible. It's too strong light.
Oh, that's pretty impressive.
Anyway, it's better, of course. Now I'm just.
Those are some nice micromounts.
Yes, what you visible now. But here, this is a garnet scar. So this is typical garnet scar from Sweden with some nice crucible, but very rarely they're gemmy. So this is something that you find in millions of tons, but high quality almost never. So when it comes to deposits, I visited a lot of garnet deposits in Scandinavia. I mean, I just went out and looked from Geological Map. For instance, in Norway, there's many granite intrusions around Oslo, one north of Oslo. And I went to the contact when I just had gotten my driver's license. And over a whole mountain, I found a huge boulder where I took out about a 70, 80 kilo slice full with beautiful garnet crystals. But I carried that in the heat with flies around me, over the clear cut and up over a mountain down to where the road was. I don't know, it was probably a kilometer. And
Wow.
I just placed it in the entrance of when I was a student where I was living. So I had a friend who was living most of the year in California. When he came home and I had just moved in, he went up and knocked on my door and said, well, it must be you, the new the new one who moved in. You've done so nicely. I put mineral specimens in the stairway, 5 stairs up, and plants and everything. So he loved this piece of garnet, So,
Well, thank you very much, Peter. I appreciate that a lot. It's interesting, talking about skarn zones. If anybody here has collected in Bancroft and had the privilege of collecting on the York River Skarn Zone, there they have perhaps one of the most beautiful presentations of a skarn garnet location, where you have brilliant orange spessartine garnets embedded in a pale blue calcite. So you etch away the calcite to expose this incredibly and beautiful contrast of blue and orange garnets, blue calcite, orange garnets. Our next presenter, next panelist, is a gentleman that I would like to say needs no introduction, but that's not really true. Everybody deserves one. And Dr. Clemens Schwarzinger sorry, I got to do that right, is Associate Professor for Chemistry at the Johannes Kepler University in Linz, Austria. And in 2016, he founded the Center for Scientific Gemology at the university. He's the owner of a small company which is dedicated to the precision gemstone cutting and developing novel cut designs, which is quite unique, I think, amongst chemistry professors. In 2017, he won the United States Fasteners Guild single stone competition in the Masters. And in 2018 and 2019, he was certified as a Grandmaster. And the only other person I know that's a Grandmaster, and there may be others, but the only one I know personally who now passed away was oh dear me, Peter.
Stefan.
Oh. This is what happens when you're old. Anyway, his ghost is going to haunt me now that I didn't remember his name. His academic research has included gemology, identification of gem treatments and mineral chemistry, in particular use of trace elements for the origin and determination of garnets, which is kind of an interesting thing to know. So I'd like to ask you to warmly welcome Dr. Clemens Schorzinger, and he's going to talk to us about the species of garnets and a whole lot of information around the subject of differentiation of one garnet from another. Please, would you begin, Clemens?
Thank you for the introduction. I try to make it not too much a lecture, but you know my profession is always cutting in. Sharing my presentation. Let's see if it works. Yeah, looks nice. So don't be afraid, not too much of the chemistry. I just want to try to educate those who are not familiar with the chemistry. What is a garnet and where are the differences and why is it called almost a supergroup of minerals? So you see, it belongs to the group of silicates. Silicates are all those minerals that contain a silicon atom and some oxygen. And typically we have one silicon and 4 oxygens, which form a tetrahedron. And these tetrahedrons can either stay as singles, like we have in the new silicates, where the garnet belongs to, or they can form dimers, multimers, chains, even platelets and things like this. So in the garnets, okay, this does not work. Yeah, in the garnets, we have a chemical composition where we have 3 of these tetrahedrons, and they're held together by a couple of cations. And we need 3 of these bivalent cations and 2 of these trivalent cations. What does it mean, bivalent, trivalent? In general, we have things that have 2+ on the molecule or on the atom, and we have here 3+. So common things would be M2 is magnesium, manganese, calcium, and M3 would be aluminum, gallium, for example, chromium. And this is the problem. They can mix in almost every ratio that you can think of. So it's very, very rare that you have a pure end member. And these pure end members, especially those which are interesting in the gem cutting, are divided into 2 supergroups, or into, let's say, 2 larger groups. The first are the pyrrole spits, and the second is the Ugrandites. So strange names. Who comes up with names like this? Well, it's a little bit more clear when you look at the individual names. We have pyropes, we have alpine and spessartine. And if you take the first letters, you end up with pyrrolsp. And of course, it's a mineral, you have to add some it at the ending. So the pyropes are made up of magnesium on the bivalent side and aluminum. Almandine is iron, the bivalent iron. And aluminum and spessartine are manganese and aluminum. So these have in common the aluminum is the trivalent ion and different bivalent ions. I tried to make some typical colors here. So the pyropes are generally the blood red stones. Almandines very often are not of gem quality. This is the stuff that makes up huge mountains here in Austria and also in Norway, like Peter said. And the spessartines are, yes, in the yellowish orange. It depends on what software you open up your presentations. Sometimes the colors change automatically. So this used to be an orange here. Going to the Ugrandites, we have the same nomenclature. We have uvarovite, we have grossular and andradite that make up the name Ugrandites. And the uvarovites are made up of calcium and chromium, grossular, calcium and aluminum, and andradite, we have calcium and iron. So here, the common member is the calcium in the bivalent state. We have here a very, very nice presentation by Lina Jakaite, which shows it a little bit how those go together. So we have all those that have aluminum, the 3 ones, this pyrope, almandine, and spessartine, but also the grossular has some aluminum in the trivalent position. And we have those who have calcium in the first place, we have the Ugarites, the Grossulars, and the Androdites. So here we have 3 end members, here we have 3 end members, and the Grossular is somewhere in between. And also here there's some idea of making the colors typical for the species. However, I can tell you there is not really a way to distinguish garnets just by the color, because you can have especially the Grossulars from colorless to deep green to orange, almost all colors, except for the blues. The blues are mostly pyrope related. So this is the general chemistry of these most important species. And how can we determine now this chemistry? Well, there are a couple of things that we can do. Most is done in major labs. We have EDX, for example, which is a radiation technique. You shoot with electrons on your sample, and then the electrons get excited, fall down, and you get some typical radiation for each element, and you can calculate the formula. What I'm mostly doing is using laser ablation, ICP-MS. It's even more strange if you use the full name. It's laser ablation, inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry. So it's not only sounds complicated, it is also complicated. And this is a machine that's in the range of 500,000 euros or $600,000 at the moment. And this gives us the chance not only to determine the major elements, but also the trace elements. And this is what we are using for example, demantoid garnets to assign the location. So we are at the moment able to tell you if your demantoid garnet is from Russia, or it's from Namibia, or maybe from somewhere else in the earth. The problem is that people are still finding new deposits, and it's very hard to keep up to date and collect all the samples. But this is a very long story. Maybe Peter will give us a little bit more details on the demantoids from the Russian deposits. So I have this picture here because I had already to give Zoom lectures to my students, and mineralogy and geology without hands-on experience is awful. But at least I could show them what a typical garnet would look like. And you see here always these are these dodecahedrons, perfect samples. All of these photos here also by Andreas Schmidt. Peter also had a couple of photos from him. If you don't know him, he's a very specialized garnet collector and an excellent photographer, and also the initiator of the Garnets Worldwide group in Facebook. So if you're interested in garnet, that would be a place to go there. And you have the different colors here. Very nice Lyco garnet, absolutely colorless. Mostly these are Grossulars, also from the Jeffrey mine, I think this piece, and all the other colors. Whenever you see something like this shapes, it's pretty much a garnet. So let's go to the gemology. What is important if you do some jewelry? Of course, you want to know the refractive index. Depending on the chemistry, we have 1.78 to 1.88. The androdites are the highest ones, or the one with the highest refractive index. And what is also very interesting is the dispersion. They can have either zero dispersion or a value of 0.057. Well, it doesn't mean anything to most people, but I give you a comparison. Diamond has 0.44. So we have garnets, especially the androdites, the demantoids, that have a higher dispersion even than diamond. So this is the sparkle, the fire that you see. The most hardness of 6.5 to 7.5 is very high. This is why they are weathering out of the mother rock and are concentrated in rivers and deposits. And what is very nice for a cutter is they're singly refractive, because they have a cubic crystal system. What does it mean, singly refractive? It means if you look at one axis or the other axis or the third axis of a crystal, the color and the physical properties are all the same. So there is not any especially soft or brittle side of the crystal, and you don't have to worry about how to cut and how to orient your stone. You just go for the perfect size, for the perfect shape of a crystal. You just cut a lot of tanzanites, for example. This is extremely awful because they have 3 colors from each of the directions, and they all blend up in the final gem. So this is much easier with garnets, and therefore I also recommend, if someone is starting to do the faceting hobby or profession, start with garnets. They give you a good yield, a good reward, and you cannot mess too much with them. Density is 3.5 to 4.3. Of course, we have to add all of these. So I told you some scientific names where we still stick to the mineralogical nomenclature and the mineralogical societies, meanings and things like this. And now there comes in the trade. So the trade is not very interested in science. They're interested in selling. And you know, what sells is a name. So it's very hard to sell an andradite, but it's very easy to sell a demantoid, for example. It is hard to sell a mixture of andradite and chrysolar, but give it Malaya Garnet. So in general, people have always come up with new names, and many names were developed by big companies, big players like Tiffany, for example. And in general, you have two different options. Either they were somehow related to the appearance of the garnets or to the places where they have been found. For example, Terrorite is the green variety of chrysolar. Chrysolar, okay, has been known for quite some time, but in the late 60s, Campbell Bridges found these nice green crystals, and he found it in the area of the Tsavo National Park. And those guys said, yeah, let's make use of this name. Let's call them Terrorites. Only recently, other deposits have been found, and I think Vita will tell us much more about these. And just one to have here named is Mirelani Mint Garnet. If it's too light to be called Terrorite, also there is no real definition what a Terrorite is. The lighter varieties were often called Mirelani Mint Garnets, and in the chemistry, they're grossolars. We know the Hassonites, these cinnamon-colored grossolars mostly found at the Jeffrey mine in Canada, for example. Very famous is the demantoid. Demantoid is an andradite garnet, very pure end members usually, with some chromium. Very often people say, yes, if it's an andradite that contains chromium and is green, then you may call it demantoid. This is not completely true because we know of many, many andradite garnets that are green and do not have any significant amount of chromium, like all the Namibian demantoids or the ones from Madagascar. They don't contain any chromium, but still they fulfill all the definition of being a demantoid. Topazolite is more or less the same if the color is not perfectly green, but yellowish green to brownish green. Spessartines, especially those that have been found in California and also those in Namibia and the Marian Fluss, are a bright orange color. And they have been dubbed either the mandarin garnets, or the latest ones coming out of Nigeria have very often been dubbed the Fanta Garnets, because Fanta, you know, the soft drink, has also such a nice color, and everybody knows Fanta. If you want to describe the color, it's Fanta color. Probably everybody in the world knows, okay, this is a bright orange. Then we come to some names which will don't really give some sense to me as a scientist, but they're in the trade. So we have to deal with something like rhodolite. And rhodolite is nothing else than a mixture of a pyrope and an almandine with an approximate ratio of 70 to 30. This is not fixed, and also pyrope and almandine, they mix up from 100% from the one side to 100% on the other side. You very rarely get some pure end members, and therefore most of those garnets can be defined as rhodolites. Malaya Garnet, as far as I know, maybe someone can correct me, Malaya means it is off color. And at the beginning, garnets were associated with the color red. So everything that's a garnet had to be red. And those were not really red. They were some maroon tones and some orange inside. So the off color and the cheap stuff. This has changed dramatically in recent years, and Malaya garnets are becoming more expensive than the real red ones. From the chemistry, it's a mixture of pyrope, spessartine, and almandine. The same holds true for the Umbalite, but the Umbalite is in this time associated with the source, and the source is the Umba Valley. Same with the Mahenge garnets, very famous at the moment. There are some people really pushing this name. Mahenge garnet is now one of the most expensive stones that you can buy, at least in the rough. It's harder to sell them, but if you want to buy them, from the composition, it's rhodolite, but what is special of these Mahenge garnets, very often they have a color change. So you have them in a pinkish to orange color change, or brownish to some reddish, violets things. And very pretty, I have to say. Maybe I can see some examples afterwards. And also, depending on the location, is the Malaya Garnet, and Malaya is androdites with a certain amount of grossolar, which can easily be detected if you just check the amount of aluminum that's inside. So a couple of photos which I thought might be typical for the species. Rhodolites typically are these red to pinkish varieties. Spessartines are mostly orange. But you have to be aware, as I told you with the colors, I've always seen completely pink and pure end members of spessartine from Vietnam. So color is not saying anything. And the worst thing that you can do as a gemologist, you probably all know, is you see a picture and you say, oh yeah, this is this and this. That's simply risky on the good side, or maybe can be completely wrong. Pyrops and mixtures of pyrops with almandine are those garnets where very often you can see a color change. Like we have the bluish to the purplish, and some strange colors like these really violet ones. Very often the cause of the color here is vanadium. The grossolars, we have the hessonites, the cinnamon colored ones, and we have the desirable tsavorite, so everything that is green here, and most of those come from East Africa. Wonderful material, it has a sparkle to it, and it has this deep color. Whoever still prefers an emerald over a tsavorite has never held two side by side. There are very, very few emeralds that can compete with the tsavorite, at least in my experience. And the price difference is enormous. So in emerald, you pay for the name and you get some cracked minerals that are filled very often. Tsavorite, you can have really, really beautiful, untreated, pure crystals and gems. And from the androdites, we have the demantoids in the green variety or in the yellowish green, where we can start lengthy discussions if this now is called demantoid or is it maybe a topazolite. If you want to argue with somebody on Facebook, just put a photo of these off-green garnets and say, yes, this is a demantoid. Here are a couple of garnets that I cut in the last 2 or 3 years, and I tried to make some rainbow. So you can see here's a rare one from the blue. From the side of photography, this is really demanding to have, first of all, this huge field of view, and also to have these different colors and all these sparkling minerals, so you get all of them in focus and all of them with the perfect color. Not easy, but this was the best shot I could make. So we have the blue ones to the purple. Here we have some brownish androdites, and we're going over the spessartines to the pinkish one. This is the rhodolite section. Here, Mahenge garnets. These are hessonites from the Jeffrey mine. We go to the Malaya garnets, and here come into the demantoids, the typically perfect green demantoids from the Ural Mountains. And here we have the other greens, which represent the tsavorites and some large purplish Mahenge garnet, some Umbalite here. And this is also, maybe to be mentioned, the yellow variety of grossolar has also come up 2 or 3 years ago. It's not perfectly clean, what you get most of the time, but it's an interesting color for a garnet. So let's have a look at some of the jewelry. It has already been mentioned, the Bohemian Garnets. Many of the Bohemian Garnets, most of the Bohemian Garnets are pyrops from the definition, and they are nice fiery red, but typically very dark. So what you can see in terms of cutting, very often you have rose cuts. These are flat at the bottom, and you just place some facets on the top so that you get some sparkle. And very often they have a bottom of some silver metal or some foil, for example, so that you get more reflectance and more light through this material. Very often the Bohemian Garnets were not abundant enough, so Austrian Garnets came in. And the Austrian Garnets, mostly from the Zillertal Valley in Tyrol, were not pyrops, but they were almandines. And so this is where you can separate the original Bohemians and the Austrian ones. They became famous in the 18th, 19th century, especially to wear with the traditional customs in Central Europe. And this is what typical garnet jewelry looks like. And if you ask somebody in Central Europe, how does garnet jewelry look like? This is what they're thinking of. It's red and it's some silver material. But this is not everything. You can have garnets in all colors, as we have already seen. And this is something I made for my wife. We have a nice demantoid from Namibia, together with the topaz here. Should be some huge diamond, but unfortunately, when you're still a student, you cannot afford everything. But the thing that I want to show you here is garnets are used in modern jewelry nowadays. So there is no need to say the garnets are only the red ones. Use them in every color, with every type of metal, with gold, with white gold, with palladium, platinum, everything can be used and is already done. Here's some Terrorite earrings, also the courtesy of my wife. Whenever I have some nice cut gems and I show it to her, I said, oh yeah, that's mine. So I cannot sell too much. And finally, here's some Marilani mint garnet. And this is the end of my introduction, but also the flashback to the science, because what you can see here, these chrysolars have one nice property. When you shine some laser light on them with ultraviolet laser, like 360 to 400 nanometers, they shine up with some orange luminescence. And this luminescence can also be used to detect the origin of the garnets. And this is one of the projects that we're looking into for the next couple of years. So with this, I want to thank you. And I'm, of course, here ready for some discussions. So
I'd like to lead off a question to you here, please, Clemens. And one of the areas that was not touched on by anybody so far is asterism in garnets. So I've been sort of disappointed with what I've seen from Idaho, which is the North American occurrence for star garnets. Are you aware of any actual good, clear, clean stars that are well defined from other locations? Because what I've seen from Idaho has not been that good.
well, asterism and clean material doesn't go together, because you need the inclusions to form the asterism, no matter if it's sapphire or whatever. So
yeah.
Clean asterism, no, that's not possible. And to be honest, I'm not really aware of any good asterism in garnets. Maybe that has something to do with the cubic crystal structure, but that's just a guess.
Yeah, because I've seen 6 and 12 grade stars from the garnets from Idaho. The trouble is they tend to be very dark garnets, so it's kind of hard to see the star in them.
Following up on that, I'm as a gem cutter, I know that a lot of the East Africa garnets can have very heavy rudal silk that's oriented. It looks like it's oriented in ways that maybe could produce asterism, but I've never tried to highlight it. I wonder if anyone knows of someone who's tried to utilize that for good.
I've never tried it. I know that especially the Mahenge garnets typically have some rutile inside, but I think it's not dense enough to produce these inclusions. The inclusions that are most prominent in garnets are the horsetails from what many people think Russian garnets, but it's not only limited to Russian, but it's also in Pakistani garnets, in Iranian garnets, in garnets from Valmalenko in Italy. But this is the most typical inclusion that I associate with the garnets.
Just as by the by, Clemens, the name I was trying to remember earlier, which you and I both know, is Stephen Kotlowski. And Stephen was the first cutter, I think, to be given the Grandmaster Award. And I can't imagine there are a whole lot of you out there that are that level of cutting. So congratulations to you on that. Not only once, but twice.
Thank you. I'm still
and
way beyond Steph.
Cutting that well, clearly you're a gifted cutter. Not only that, but you are a very good presenter. I on behalf of our audience, I'd like to thank you for giving a very comprehensive overview of the chemistry.
Thank you, my pleasure.
So does anybody else have any questions or suggestions to add to the general knowledge? I'd ask you not to be shy here. And by the way, is it Michelle, was talking about seeing silk in garnets? If you can message me some information about that material, I'd like to get a hold of some of that, see if I can get it to start. So the next person on the panel is a gentleman that I'm jealous of for a whole lot of reasons. One, he gets to see the stuff where it's mined. Two, he looks so young. I wish I could be that young looking. And three, he's a pretty smart guy. He goes under the stage name of Peter Young, but his real name is Peter Ngumbi, and he's a Kenyan, and he's a gem graduate from the University of Nairobi, and a third-generation gem buyer. He's not someone who started off on his own. He's got a grandfather and a father who've also led the way in this particular field, and of course that's very important in African situation because if your family is known for generations to be a buyer, it sometimes I'm sure makes it easier and greases the wheels, makes it a little easier. And he travels the length and breadth of the continent of Africa, particularly in Eastern Africa, acquiring garnets and other gems from mines and miners. And I think from what I've seen, he's very skilled at negotiation. He's in the field, so his knowledge and experience is vital for his success. And I'm hoping he'll be able to share with us some stories and some images of mining and hopefully even some grading and some of the different kinds of garnets that he himself handles. And I'd like you to welcome Peter. The stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. So about the third generation, just the other day, my dad pulled out a 6.7 carat a Windsor sapphire that he had it in his safe for a long time. So he just pulled it out and gave it to me for free. So that is what it means being in third generation in the business. So, well, I'd like to share with you guys some photos of some stones I've acquired during my travels. And I'd like you guys to see, for example, the difference between the Kenyan mint garnet and Merelani mint garnet. Just there you go. Just 1 minute. In this photo, for example, you can see there's 4 stones here, right? And 3 of these stones are actually from Kenya. Yeah, Grosula garnets from Kenya, and one in the middle with the blue tint is the Merelani mint. Many of the people would really not differentiate as much as the composition is the same, but the color is totally different from the Kenyan material and the Tanzanian material. Number 2 is the Mozambique purple garnets and the Tanzanian purple garnet. They're almost close, but if you hold the stone very close, this is a Mozambique purple garnet, okay? But in this other photo is a Tanzanian purple garnet. Let's see this. Almost the same, but if you keep on traveling and going to these mines, you'll definitely notice the difference. Maybe the formation or the texture in every stone. Number 3, there is the Malawi Umbala Garnet and the Umbala Garnet from Umba Valley. For example, let me see. This is Umba Garnets from Umba Valley, okay? But on the other side, these are Umbalites from Malawi, the Longwe mine in Malawi. Very close, they almost look the same, but from 2 different mines. Sure. Number 3 is like the Kenyan Terrorite and the Tanzanian Terrorite. this photo is this is Kenyan material with more of the tint, the blue tint, and this is this one right here. They're from Tanzanian mines, Mirarani, right there.
C'est laborieux, chérie.
If you travel, you will understand the difference and buy direct from the mines. For myself, if I see this stone anywhere, I'll be able to differentiate. But if you don't travel, if you just sit in an office and you don't move around, then in most cases, people will lie the origin. These are Malaya Garnets from Tanzania, not Maenge Garnet. These are totally different mine from Maenge. Unlike this, which are from the Maenge mines. Just 1 minute. These are from Maenge. So most of the times people will try to like sell a stone that is from maybe Lindi in Tanzania and try to pose it as a stone from Maenge, maybe to get the pricing on, or I don't understand. This is a blue garnet from Kenya. And I get another photo of blue garnets from Tanzania. This is the blue garnet from Tanzania. These are more of teals than the blues. The Kenyan material has more blue compared to the Tanzanian material that has the blue-green, more of blue-green than the strong blue. These are strawberry garnets. That is the name I see mostly online is strawberry garnets from Tanzania, Morogoro. This one right here is a very nice bubble garnet from Morogoro. This one here is this is the true Malaya Garnet. This was like, if you go to the internet and see everything, the first Malaya Garnets were discovered in Umbala, in Tanga, Tanzania, and they came in more orange to slightly red. But this is a Malaya Garnet from Maenge. Just 1 minute. This is a Malaya Garnet from Maenge. If you can notice the difference. This is more of off color, light color compared to the Tanga material. And still, there is another version of Malaya Garnet that comes from Tanga, which is right this one. This is another version of Malaya Garnet found in Umbala Valley. Most people think only peach garnets come from Tanzania, but I want to show you some peach garnets from Kenya. These are actually from Kenya. They never come in alluvials, but the peach garnets of Tanzania come in, most of them come in alluvials, like for example, this stone. This is from Tanzania. Close to the same color, very close. Is after cutting the stone is very difficult to differentiate the ones from Kenya and the ones from Tanzania. But in rough, it's easy to differentiate. This is also a color change. You see, this is from Kenya. Changes into this on different lightings. This is the same material and a different lighting. I don't know if you guys have ever come across bicolor garnet. This is a stone I performed myself. It's actually a Kenyan stone. It's a bicolor grossular garnet, which I found very unique. And if I can share with you guys some of my photos. Actually, this is my dad. In this photo, the guy seated down is my dad. These were my early stages. I'm the one on green. This was like 10 years ago when he was introducing me to the gem industry and buying everything. So if I can show you like this photo. This is a Terrorite mine photo with the miners right there trying to show me what they found, the recent production. This one here is same. So this is a Terrorite miner holding a very nice gem quality piece of Terrorite. And right here is this is actually from Morogoro, not Maenge. As much as it's more pink than red, people will mistaken this stone to be Maenge, but it's absolutely not. It is from Morogoro. Right here. These are Serpentinites garnets from Loliondo, Tanzania. We have in that mine you come across two different colors. One is more of the yellow than the orange, and others are more completely strong orange. If we can show you other. This is like a true nice blue garnet from Kenya. Is absolutely, some of the Kenyan blue garnets, they don't change color. They are blue. They completely don't change color under different lights. This one here is this is a very interesting stone I found in Kenya. This is a violet. It's a violet garnet. Same material I was able to find in Tanzania. Same color. Let me see if I still have that other same material, but two different mines, but almost the same. other garnets I have come across some of the color changing. You see, these are changes from they are more of purple and changing to a very strong red. Let me show you some other more of the stone. These are pyro garnets from Tanga. They're very, very nice stones. After cut and polish, they are excellent. They come in big sizes. The biggest I've ever owned in this color, clean material, was about, I think, 200 grams, clean, flawless. If I can show more of the garnets I've been able to see, is this type of garnet. This is an Azonite garnet from Tanga. But people, if you go to Tanga, they refer them to as cake sapphires. But they are not sapphires at all. They are Azonite garnet. They never come clean. Most of them, and they come in big sizes. Most of them are big number. They are fully included. These are some of the photos. This is actually a colorless garnet from Kenya. We have these ones in Kenya and in Tanzania too.
Do you have any pictures of the mining in Umbala Valley or in Marilani?
No, most like the last year, I've never been able to travel to Tanzania because of COVID. But most of the photos I have is like from Kenya. For example, like this one here is a guy. This is a miner. The biggest challenge we have in buying is that these guys at the mines, they don't allow you to select their stuff. They want you to buy the junk. They want you to buy the gem. They don't care. So it's upon you to do your math and see if whatever is clean and whatever is junk, if the asking price, you can make a profit. So it's very, very difficult sometimes to buy stones from the mine.
Does anybody have any questions of Peter here regarding the issues of collecting and mining and buying in Africa?
Ed asked a question about color change garnets. I don't know, Ed, if you want to unmute and.
Actually, it's Ruth who asked the question. I'm using Ed's computer.
Okay.
It's simply, I'm just interested in the color change, and I know Vitor has shown us some excellent examples of that, and so did Clemens. So that was great. I'm just wondering if anybody can say, you know, are they widespread globally, and are they limited? And maybe this is for Clemens, to only one or two of the garnet compositions, or do you get color change across the full range of the various garnets?
Okay, I'm trying to recollect, but most of the color changing or color shifting garnets that I'm aware of come from Eastern Africa. And in terms of chemistry, I already said that many of them contain vanadium, because vanadium has this band gap which is perfectly within the visible spectrum to allow for this phenomenon. And very often there is a high pyrope content. But in general, most of those garnets really cut a lot of Tanzanian material. They at least show some nice color shift. Color change is a little bit more rare. Orange to red ones, pinkish ones, but the the rarest of all is, of course, the blue to red or blue to green. But at least to my knowledge, most of those are associated with Eastern Africa.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question actually regarding differentiating garnets by their inclusions, because I was aware that Marilani have, because of the unique geology there, often has inclusions of graphite. I'm wondering about the horsetails and other common things like they're associated with grossular or whatever that you might use to differentiate between the diamonds. I mean, between the garnets. Peter, do you have any? I noticed that most of the stones that you were showing us were alluvial, and very few of them were cut from the original rock.
Yeah, because it's very difficult sometimes to find from the original rocks. It's very, very difficult to find clean stones, especially in Savannah, because they use, while mining, they use very, very powerful explosives, and they end up like destroying even the production. So I try as much as possible to get the alluvials, because of most of them are pretty clean compared to the ones from the original rocks.
Yeah, I think Peter Lickberg alluded to that beautiful difference, which also makes itself known in sapphires and diamonds as well, in terms of the fact that these stones have already been broken down and banged around to get rid of the weak spots.
Okay, we have 3 more questions in the chat. Tana wants to know, Vita, do you buy directly from the miners?
Yes, absolutely. I buy direct from the miners.
Very good. Phil wants to know, well, Phil, do you want to ask your question rather than me read it out?
Yeah, sounds good. I am curious about whether the Kenyan or Tanzanian governments have any role or interest in assessing gemstone potential for the discovery of new deposits in support of artisanal miners.
Yeah, both governments are for sure. Especially in Kenya, they really support the artisanal miners, and we have like county governments coming in and supporting as much as they can, and for sure, yes, they are doing their best they can do.
Okay, because I'm working on some new potential research methods for gemstone exploration, so maybe I'll send you a message on Facebook and we can talk about that some more.
Absolutely, no problem.
Great. And Melvina wants to know whether you can share information on the collecting trips that you've been thinking about offering.
Yeah, this is something that I saw that many people in the market are buying stones that they are not sure about their origin. So when someone comes and buys direct from a miner and travels around the mines and seeing the difference in maybe, it will be easy for him or her to identify when he sees the stone, rather than just sitting and just a stone comes and this is Mirarani Mint, which is not Mirarani Mint, it's actually from Kenya, you know. So if people can travel and see where basically the stones are coming from, that would be something that is helps your business in terms of identifying the traces or where the stones are coming from.
Yeah. Sadly, we're not quite at a situation where we're able to do that again yet.
Yeah, for sure, yes, it's a big blow.
Okay.
Any more questions, Julian?
That's all that I have listed here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Peter. I really appreciate your time and effort into putting together those pictures for us. So now we're going to move on. Our next panelist, again, is someone we already had before, but I'm going to do a little better job. Peter Lickberg is a gem and mineral collector extraordinaire who has been published and spoken about his many decades of mining and exploring for gems all over the world. And he will be sharing with us a bit of his experience with Russian gem garnets. Peter. No sound.
So, you hear me now?
Yep.
Very good. So I will introduce a little bit to the history and geology of the Russian demantoids. They were first found in the Urals, and later they have been found in other places. So we will go to the Ural Mountains here, which is about 2,000 kilometer long mountain ranges continuing, you could say, on Novaya Zemlya. And when we look at the geological map, we will see that there are north-south trending belts. There are many different type of intrusions, magmatic rocks there is, and of course, metamorphic rock units in contact and a little bit further. So we had a question here with regards to the garnets in general. And here, when I show you the map, I will try to explain a little bit, because next to, as I said, a contact metamorphic right to a granite in contact to silica to a limestone, you will form the grossel or calcium garnets, for instance. But further away, if you have a serpentinite or something else, you will find this chrome-rich garnets. I'm not speaking about Geology, where in fact, which is found primarily large crystals in Finland, where the chromium is a component of the mineral composition, but the demantoid has chromium in it, and as we heard before, they have a very high dispersion. So I've traveled to Russia since 1992 to quite a few mines. Oh, it's a little bit off now, the map. You see Nizhny Tagil up in the very north corner. Here was in fact a pegmatite where you can see the garnets by my hand, and here is also this should have been in the previous. Now you see the geological map. North-south trending, we have some dark ultrabasalts, serpentinites, we have some lighter colored granite intrusions. So both to the west of the intrusions and the east of the granite intrusion, we have contact metamorphic. To the east is primarily emerald alexandrites. And we also have, to the west, we have where granite comes in contact with serpentinites, we have a lot of pegmatites with colored tourmaline. Now further west, we will go to Nizhny Tagil. The first demantoid was found in gold washing. So gold and platinum was worked in the Urals. Here is huge platinum. So the first gold was found in 1814, and then here is Nizhny Tagil, was famous, a big iron mine, big copper mine, and they found a huge boulder of malachite there. Here are some young Ural mineral collectors. Just to give you an idea, this is exactly what the region in the central Ural looks like. Rolling hills in the north and south, higher mountains above a timberline. And in fact, the Ural collectors nowadays also, the first serious gem mining, gem finds was in 1668 by Mersinka. And now I get images almost every week from friends. Nikolai Belenko is an excellent Russian geologist, mineralogist, who take kids out every week, even in winter, to dig in deposits. And that's what they did in the old days also. So here is the original location, Bobrovka. It's a small stream southwest of Nizhny Tagil. They found the first demantoids there 1868. So here we have serpentinites. Now, mostly of the demantoid, they occur in very, very thin zones which are filled by asbestos. And you can follow those zones from up Nizhny Tagil down to Yekaterinburg, which is 1.5 to 2 hours drive, to several hours drive south to Chelyabinsk. And I know several collectors in the Urals who just go out and go to the zone. The zone is usually from a few centimeters to 0.5 meter wide, the best. Just dig in the forest. If you have enough knowledge of geology, you can find, and they are finding some interesting things. Now, Bobrovka, there's no mining claim. It's just a few guys who goes there. Here is in summer, but they go in winter and dug also. You see, I'm not showing this guy's face because I don't think they want to be in trouble if they don't have a license. Some people think, oh, they're illegal mines. Well, there are many miners in countries, they're poor. So, you know, these guys, they don't do it for a full-time work. Usually they're cutters themselves. They go and dig a hole, 2, 3, 4 meter deep. They move tons to hundreds of tons of material. And what they usually get is a few small tiny demantoids. So not like the one covering his face there. Here I visited one collector, and he had, you know, a lot of dopsticks with demantoids of various colors, various shapes. And here is from Pale International, a photo by Mia Dixon, just to show the incredible quality and dispersion of the best demantoids. When you go now, this is by Bobrovka. The tricky thing is there is a Bobrovka river also in the south by Chelyabinsk, where there is demantoid, and this is here. You go in the forest. Here's a little pit out in the forest. There were pits dug here 100 years ago. Some were dug a few months ago, a few years ago. Mostly the miners are very careful filling them in. This was in fact one of the few I found that was not filled in some years old. Now there are two major big quarries also. And if you see here to the right, the zone is, I would say, right in the middle here and going off at the bottom. And if we look at the left picture, the photo, the zone is right here. If you can see my arrow, it's following here, going down here. And it's a huge quarry, but there's not any demantoid really here. It's one thin fissure zone where you sometimes find pockets. And the best ones were found right at the surface. And they made this huge pit, Podnevaya, and did not find that much in comparison to the amount of work. That's also, we came back to this to find in the river. Sometimes in this vein, we see these zones are tens of kilometers long, and a few spots they found really nice aggregates. So here is a close-up. You can see in the right picture, the zone is here, the darker area. And here is, I was visiting this Podnevaya mine with quite a few Russian gemologists. They were very, very active. It was interesting to see. Most of the gemologists in Russia seems to be ladies, which you see here. And the funny thing was, in this quarry, the Vogue magazine came to shoot, but they were interviewing the miners, and they had a whole bunch of beautiful ladies here, but you would think they would put them in. I was not in that part of the quarry most of the time, but anyway, here is the matrix. So the specimen to the left, you can see the fine asbestos. We have this inclusions, as you see up to the right, also horsetail inclusions. So that's naturally occurring. And you see the specimen here. Crystals are usually rounded. Sometimes you find, I've seen up to 2 centimeter rather sharp crystals. Well, 2.5 centimeter I saw in early 90s at the Munich show. And here is a close-up. You can see very rounded grays, and some of them, the colors are various. I will show you the color spectrum. There are 4 main categories of, color. 2 are supposed to, the best, and the very, very best is extremely difficult. Here is a close-up, and here is the forest. When you go into those forests, sometimes you can find 1, 2 guys who are out mining some days or some weeks. So here are, to the left, you can see this pit they had dug, and they filled them back in. And what they had found, you see to the right here. This is what they had found. 1 little large and not gemic, 2 beautifully green, and another smaller one which is not gem quality at all. My friend here, Dax, to the right, he's showing. He was very impressed, he's an American gemologist, that the miners in the middle of the forest, in the middle of nowhere, this was quite some ways from the nearest gravel road, that they did not even throw a cigarette butt. They all gathered them in 1 cup, and he was very impressed to see that. There was no garbage laying around. And here are the miners smoking, and it's not often they have such a nice team of Russian gemologists visit. They were very happy to pose. Otherwise, they're shy of taking their picture. Here is a nice spectrum of garnets. I think most of those are in fact from the north of the Nizhny Tagil Bobrovka, but it could be also from the south. And you see the spectrum from oranges, yellow to yellowish green to very few darker green. You see the larger ones to the second from the left bottom is a quite strong green. And I would say even demantoids of good color over a carat are very rare. And large ones over 5 carats are exceptionally rare. Even a 2 carat would be extraordinary. So tsavorite occur in larger stones than demantoids. And here are some beautiful pictures from Mia Dixon I think the one up to level 6.82, I think I put it in another one. What is interesting, in those same deposits, sometimes they find the same chromium rich with enclosures, but of red color. So what shall we call them? Here is one 7.81 carats, photographed by Ayuna Yusuti from Fort Sarina Jewels. So this is very popular, and in fact, the specialist in Urals, the real demantoid expert, they can see absolutely from exactly which deposits, even looking at inclusions, and sometimes even just the color. Here was a close-up of that, even close-up, more close-up. And this is a 29-carat demantoid from Barbarka in Nizhny Tagil. Fantastic photograph, this huge horsetail inclusion by Lukas Vasari. Here's another one. And oops, just for some Russian food is very, very good also. And Russian mineral show. Oops, that's it. So that was an introduction to Russian demantoid. We already heard about the dispersion, and that was, of course, giving the name demantoid, diamond-like. And the best demantoids are unbelievable, has nothing to do with topazolite. So when I see, which I would rather call topazolite from many other areas, there from Namibia, Madagascar, I would say very, very few would probably classify. One could look at the dispersion and the chromium content, but the best Ural demantoid is unbelievable. When you see it, it's like we heard about the best savarite compared to emeralds there. Just fabulous.
Thanks so very much, Peter. That was very interesting. So we're going to move along now to our last presenters, as such, and that's Willow and Quinton White from Ottawa. They're both well-known speakers, and I have 2 copies of Quinton's book on micromining, so that's how much I like his writing. And they're very well known in the gem world. Willow actually is presently semi-retired, but definitely associated in the gem aspects of the Canadian Museum. Is it called the Museum of Science or Museum of Natural History?
Actually, it's the Canadian Museum of Nature.
Nature.
It used to be called the National Museum of Natural Sciences, but that was too scientific for some people, so then they decided Canadian Museum of Nature.
Okay, so yeah. And Willow, is Quinton going to be working with you on this, or just you?
No, he has had a, we did a thing together about the trips to Namibia and to Russia, but I'm just going to do this very quickly because we don't have a lot of time. So should I just share my screen?
Yep, please do that, Willow.
Share. Does that work?
We just have to cone down to the main screen, main picture.
Where's my? Is that? Can you see that?
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so that was, yeah, this was just, you already know where Yekaterinburg is because Peter has told you. We were in Russia in 2007, and we did a couple of field trips after the IGC, and the Novokarkodinskoye mine for demantoid is southwest of Yekaterinburg. And it was a fairly new site at the time, and this was just, we're walking over the area. And as Peter said, the veins are extremely small. Just here on the right, there's this yellow greenish vein, and this is a close-up in serpentinite. And that's what they were working on a bit. And this is the sort of stuff they were getting, demantoid bearing rock. And it was very interesting because they had just started trying a new process, because how do you get little garnet crystals out of a mass of rock without breaking the crystals? And they had this new technique, a high pressure vessel and pulsing very high electricity. And you ended up with this gravel, but these were the crystals, you see. And we were quite interested because apparently this method was developed by a Canadian company in Ottawa, Ontario, and of course that's where we live. So that was quite interesting. And these were some of the crystals that they had sorted out according to the color gradation. And you can see the top, they're more brownish and darker. And then the better looking ones are down at the bottom. But, and there was a local cutting shop. And of course, such small crystals, they were using jam peg. They figured that was the most efficient way to get some yield. And these were some of their faceted stones. These are quite nice. They're not too big, of course, but very rare and quite pricey. Now, we went back to Yekaterinburg and had a very interesting visit to the Museum of the Ural State Mining University. And this was the outside, and it was quite fun, actually. This huge bug, and there were crystals sticking down from the top. So Quinton's actually trying to protect my head. He's not shoving me around. And they had many things, lots of malachite and rhodolite artifact vases, all kinds of stuff, lots of emeralds. And in this little room, I just wanted to show you, there were lots of emeralds too, but small group went in, we were locked in, there was an armed guard, and this is what we saw, among other things. These were absolutely fantastic demantoid garnets, and I can't put a carat weight on them, but they were just, it was quite a thrill. Then on to Namibia in 2017. We were field trips after the conference, went from Windhoek out to Swakopmund, stopping at some of these mines in this area here. And we did tourmaline mines and so on, but just past the Orongo crater, the Green Dragon demantoid mine. And this was a welcome. We arrived and they had just done a blast, and Quinton was terribly shocked at how haphazard it was with all these little rocks throwing around through the air. And it doesn't really look like much, but that was it. And the blast was up here somewhere. And they say the garnets are deposited in 2 different stages. And one stage gave fractured stones, and the others, there were whole crystals. So they tried to be very selective, but we didn't see too much of that exactly, but it was pretty dangerous. This was all very loose and yeah, not a very safe place. So in Swakopmund, they have this gallery, the Crystal Gallery. It's mostly a museum, and these are the demantoid crystals from the Green Dragon mine. And of course, they are known more for their unusual size than the clarity. And you can see they're bigger, but the color isn't all that great. They still call them demantoid garnet. And this was the best little crystal we saw magnified on a piece, but they are a bit larger and better shaped than the ones from the Urals, I think. So anyway, that's all I have to say. If I can figure out how to stop my screen sharing.
Thanks very much, Willow. That was very much appreciated. So
okay, there we go. That's
we're trying to include in every one of our programs a section that's devoted to the private and public collections. And so, are you here, Catherine? I can't see your name. Catherine Donnell here. Okay, so I guess we're not going to see. We're not going to see anything from the Royal Ontario, but we are privileged to have received a group of pictures from the MIM, and that will be how we close our program. So I'm going to ask Jolian to take over for that and show us and commentate on the different specimens, because MIM is famous, made itself famous for trying to collect the best in the world that there is. So Jolian.
So just before we start that, I think Michelle had a question.
Okay, please.
Yeah, and the grouping of demantoids, the dark green ones from the Museum of the Armed Guard, it looked like there was red flash from the lower bottom right stone, and I was curious if that was the Umbala effect, where the color is dependent upon path length. Or even if you don't want to go back to that because of time, like whether or not that's a known phenomenon in demantoid garnets.
Maybe I can share a picture here that gives the answer. So this is one of the Ural demantoids from Ufalay, and you see it's not an Usumbara effect, but it has a different chemistry here. So in the core, you have a higher concentration of titanium, which is producing the reddish to brown color. And very often you only see the fragments, and there you had this orangey to red ring. So this, by the way, is a 77 carat piece. It's more or less the half of a noodle of a garnet. And Peter, to your question, how do we name it? Well, if you heat it up, by the way, the Ural material turns green. So 50% of the garnets from the Ural that you see are heated. Some improve the color, and depending on the locality, some do not change at all. And this is all something, also something that is true for Namibian material. They also produce a lot of this brownish material, but you can heat whatever you want, and they will not turn green.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for your question, Michelle. I appreciate the fact that people are asking questions. I really hope that as we move along, people will get a little bolder and ask some more interesting questions to help us learn. So Jolion, take it away, please.
Okay, bear with me a second. Okay, so this is a series of photos, and the descriptions and the data are in a spreadsheet which are separate, so I'll have to read those out as I go through. If you have any questions about a particular photo as we put it up, then please do shout out while I'm doing it rather than having to go back at the end. It's probably the best way of doing it. Okay, so these are all from the MIM Museum in Lebanon, of course. So we're starting off with a Malaya Garnet. Now, this is is 9.5 centimeters across, this one. So it's quite large. I do have weights here listed. They're all in grams, not in carats, of course. And this is listed at just over 2 kilos. So let's carry on.
That's 10,000 carats.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously not gem quality. Spessartine on feldspar, of course, from the Shigar Valley in the northern areas of Pakistan. So that's the largest crystal size on this is 1.4 centimeters. A Savarite, of course, from Meralani. This is 37 grams, 3.9 centimeters. I'll stay on that for a second because that is quite amazing. All right, so this is a Brazilian spessartine, 10 centimeters crystal size. Chinese spessartine on quartz from Tongbei. So the largest individual crystal there, which are presumably the ones near the base, is 0.8 centimeters. So this one is another Shigar Valley, Pakistan piece. And that's 5.5 centimeters across. That's absolutely fantastic, isn't it? Obviously with quartz. Okay, and to another photo of the same specimen, yes. That's what confused me for a second. And another. Right, okay, so here we have another Mali, Groschula, or well, so Groschula androdite, I imagine. And that's a 6.1 centimeter specimen there. That one there is obviously a Tanzanian spessartine. That's 3.7 centimeters. This one's Madagascan, Androdite. That's the largest crystal on here is 2.7 centimeters. Another photo of the same piece. And that's the same file. Okay, okay, another Tanzania orange spessartine. And another. Oh, sorry, I didn't give you the size. The last one was this was 6.3 centimeters, and this one's 2.5. Okay, so yeah, some more Chinese. Sorry, not Chinese. This is Jeffrey Quarry. So,
Jeffrey mine.
Yeah, Jeffrey from Canada, of course. So Hessenites. So its largest is 2.4 centimeters there. And that was collected in 1972, apparently, this piece. Here's the Chinese one. Yes. So, yeah, another Tongbei spessartine. And that is up to 1.3 centimeters. And another similar size crystals, 1.2 centimeters. Very characteristic surface textures on those. Right, okay, another Brazilian spessartine from Minas Gerais. That's 2.1 centimeters. Looks like it's, I can't tell whether it's albite or whatever it's with. And another Jeffrey Quarry, of course. Again, 1972, 2.6 centimeters crystal, this one. And that is the same piece. That is quite fantastic. And this one is an Italian grossula. So, so this is largest crystal on that is 2.3 centimeters. Another photo of the same piece. And then the next four are Mali. So this one is a melanite, androdite type garnet. And the largest crystal on here is 15.8 centimeters. And the specimen weighs over 7.5 kilos. This one here, a little bit smaller, 5.1 centimeters. Grossula androdite, and another 4.3.
Those are Lake Jaco, Mexico, are they?
These are Mali. These are all Mali. These ones.
Oh, those are Mali. Okay.
Yeah. And this is again another Mali one. To show some variety. Okay, right now this is classic spessartine in galena from Broken Hill Mine, New South Wales, Australia. So those are up to 4 centimeters, those crystals. And of course, that's a classic piece. And another Merillani grossula, of course. And this one is 5.4 centimeters, 165 grams. Okay, so now classic Finnish uvarovite, the chromium garnet, and these are the up to 2 centimeters. Generally, the Finnish ones are the type locality for the garnet, and these ones are certainly a lot bigger than the ones in general from Russia. And there's another picture of the same piece. Okay, another spessartine. This one's from the Hercules spessartine dike at the Little 3 mine from San Diego County, California. It's a 3 centimeter crystal, obviously with albite and schorl, and this was found in 1993. More Madagascar androdites, those up to 2 centimeters on this piece. Another, I don't know, just back, I'm sure I haven't skipped one here. Yeah, this is a Swiss one. This is a Swiss grossula, and this is 3.7 centimeter crystal, apparently collected in 1880. And another piece, another picture of it. Okay, Vermont, from the Vermont Asbestos Group mine in Eden and Lowell Mills. So these are your classic Hessonite garnets, grossula, and this piece is, the largest crystals on this are 1.6 centimeters.
Those are amazing.
They are, aren't they? Oh, I mean, everything here is amazing, but yeah, that is particularly fantastic. Okay, grossula from Italy, and this is a 1.6 centimeter, the largest crystal on there. 1947, this one was found apparently. And another one, both from the same locality in Val Malenko. And this one's the slightly smaller crystals, 1.4 centimeters. In 1967, this one was found. And the last one is spessartine from Nigeria, from Oyo State. This is 1.8 centimeter crystals, and it's 11 grams.
That's 55 carats. That's nice.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Julian, for doing that.
Yeah, well, we have to thank Salim for sending through the photos and the data, and looking forward to a day when I can go and visit the museum and see all these in person.
Yep, me too, actually. So all of you have persevered amazingly well. This is longer than any program we've had so far, but considering the depth and breadth of this particular group of gems, it's kind of amazing we're able to get as much in as we were. I really appreciate the panelists. Thank you all for your time and effort put into giving us and sharing with us the images and your experience and knowledge. And I'd like to set everybody up for February 28th, which is a Sunday, when we have our next issue of the GemQuest, and it will be on a very popular mineral in gem shows, which is tourmaline. So I'm hoping, and of course I happen to love it because it produces an awful lot of very fine gems as well. And hopefully we'll be able to draw from the worldwide wealth of knowledge that there is on tourmalines. They're not as widely spread. They're limited to primarily to pockets in pegmatites. They're not really something you find alluvially, although they are found in Africa occasionally and alluvia. So I'm hoping that maybe Vitor, you might want to come back and talk to us a little bit about your experience with African tourmalines. And we have a number of other experts that are going to be sharing with us, including our infamous and famous Peter Lickberg, who has a great deal of experience collecting tourmalines. So we'll look forward to next month. And I hope as many of you, if not all of you, will return. And hopefully next time, we'll give you some more confidence to ask questions. I thank those who asked questions this time, and I hope more of you will be involved next time in that way. Have a great day, and I hope that we'll see more again on the 28th of February at 8 p.m. London time. It's a Sunday, so hopefully it won't interfere with your work. Have a great day, keep well, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.